Rise to pledge the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have a pretty straightforward agenda tonight. We're going to have a discussion amongst the school committee regarding tuition agreement process and deliberation. And then also, though, I did want to just indicate some things that happened between now, or between our last meeting and now. We did hold 2 open house / office hours sessions last Tuesday. I don't know if you want to speak to those at all.
Sure. Yep. We did the first one from 2 to 4 p.m. On Tuesday of last week. Myself, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Grant, and then several members from the staff were in attendance. That open forum was specifically held for just staff. So I just kind of highlighted the things that were discussed. There were a lot of questions were asked, discussion was held, concerns of the staff member was shared. We also had Ms. Davenport highlight the wonderful things that were happening in the RISE program as well as the cafe. And then again, a little bit of discussion came up about pros, cons of regionalization versus the tuitioning agreement. Then from 6 to 8, same day on Tuesday, we held another forum. Again, myself, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Grant, some community members, parents of current students were here. So some of the parents that were in attendance was a bit newer, so we kind of went a little backwards and re-explained how we kind of have come to investigating the potential for a tuitioning agreement. So that subject was explored and discussed. Again, in that meeting, regionalization versus tuitioning agreement was discussed slightly, and several parents shared their positive experiences in North Brookfield and shared their concerns about a tuition agreement.
Thank you, Kristen. So then also we did one on Friday from 12 to 2 on the 13th, which was again open for families, community members, anybody to come who had questions. They couldn't make a nighttime appointment. We ended up having about, I think it was roughly, did you say 20 students?
Yeah, about that.
I think it was roughly 20 students were in here for about an hour and a half, and we kind of talked through a lot of questions, concerns, listened to a lot of concerns from students. Unfortunately, there was no family or anything that came during that time period, but it was just the students that ended up being here. So yeah, and we're going to put this into the minutes, and I just have to add mine, so it's on the record of those for those open houses we had. So in terms of, does anybody have questions on any of that from the committee? Okay. So in terms of how we want to handle tonight's discussion / deliberation, open to hear from the committee and what they'd like to discuss, what their concerns are, what their topics they want to go through are. If we want to go down the line, we can go down the line. We can address one thing at a time. I'm open to hearing what, I've done a lot of talking, I know, at a lot of these meetings, so I'm going to kind of see who else wants to discuss anything or start the conversation.
I think a lot of information's gone out over the last few weeks. Do we want to do any kind, I don't know if anyone's here to speak from the public, so should we start off with
I think we'll do public comment after, only because
okay.
like last week when we did public comment, we got to a point where it was getting late to start our own discussion.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do public comment first, I just don't want to end up in that same situation. But I mean, I'm open to hearing from the rest of the committee on that as well. So.
I'm fine either way. If was the agenda called out as?
Yeah, we have public comment after.
Okay.
For after. On the
So as long as we didn't call out for public comment first.
Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So one of the things I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the committee saw was an email that I did receive from Superintendent Duff at Quabog. I just wanted to make sure you all saw that and read that, or had a chance to look at it in what was given.
This is what you sent yesterday?
Yeah. And do we have any questions on that? maybe we could read it out loud. I don't know that I know he couldn't be here tonight, but I just wanted to make sure at least it got sent to the committee, so it could be on the record as well. There was a bit of information in there, and some of it was pertaining also to what we probably are going to talk about anyway. I mean, this may be the time to do it, in regards to the special ed numbers. And the one thing I did want to add as well from myself, I did reach out to a company called TMS, which the district has used in the past as a consultant. I reached out to them last week. I just got a response yesterday, which I can forward out to the group. They said they can definitely do an analysis of our 6 through 11 current students, which would be 7 through 12 for FY27. It would take them, they said, roughly 2 weeks, and it would cost up to $8,000. But they said they would just need the IEPs from the school to do that. And if does anybody have questions, I guess, on why there is a big difference or how there's a big difference? Because I think that's probably important to discuss.
I think it would just be helpful to understand, because that makes a huge difference. Clearly, there was such a swing. So,
yep.
If there could be someone who could help explain it, I think it would be helpful to everyone.
Sure. So I know, Tim, you sent out some language on this today to the committee. From my perspective, I can just give a background, and then I'll let Tim speak as well on it. So we met with Quabog and Quabbin in the beginning of December, and they both gave initial proposals, which was the whole point of this, is to get starting proposals. They handed us a sheet that had a rate sheet along with the state's circuit breaker rules and how you apply a claim, basically. And the conversation was essentially one of, this would be a starting point. We can look at this method or another method, but this would be a method to look at. So after that meeting, I had asked if we could do those in-house, if we could look at all those numbers in-house. Initially, it was thought it would be too big of a lift for the special ed department, but then Tim did say he was able to get them to put it together for us. So they looked at everything and put numbers together for us. Came back at $1.2 million based on the things that I know and heard that seemed very high. So I did ask Superintendent Duff if that was what he was thinking, and he said not at all, based on what the parameters of the sheet were looked at. So they went back and looked at them and came up with, I think it was $450,000 based on all of our 6 through 11 current students. And again, this is just one methodology on how we could do it if we decided to enter this agreement. I don't know that right now, tonight, we need to get that answer, because we have to also figure out if we want to go into that type of agreement, and then these things can be ironed out after. But certainly, I think we do need to understand how one, just in general, because these things are going to come up again if we talk about this, is how does one special education department look at one thing, get a number, and how does one get a vastly different number? And just understanding that maybe would help us all get to a realization.
Because would it be fair to say that that looking at that proposal, it would appear based upon the estimate of the 1.2 that's where our costs would go up significantly from tuitioning out, would be our special education costs. That looks to me like the big difference, or no?
But I would say, I would agree with you, between Quabog and Quabbin, yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to explain how we got the 1.2.
Well, I guess my first question would be, do we have, I've heard varying numbers. I mean, the 1.2 is a number we've been pretty consistent with, right? Is there a firm number from Quabog around their projections with this?
So they recalculated it based on the information they had, and it came back to 450,000. And again, this is something I just want to stress to the committee, that we don't have to make a final decision on numbers like that tonight. Those things would be, we have to first get to a point of, do we want to do what we're talking about? And then the next step would be to meet with legal counsel, them, we can hire that independent consultant that I just mentioned. I mean, those things can all be looked at. But, so from what I understand, I think the difference is, from reading between the lines here, is that when we looked at it, our district didn't think it was would be calculated the same way that a circuit breaker claim was calculated. That's how the bigger difference came in?
Not exactly. I'm going to have Mike just give a quick overview on how because he had his team calculate those numbers. So
the foundational issue is that we never received a methodology for which we would calculate spending at all. We were given a rate sheet with hourly rates, and that is it. Nothing in writing that spells out anything whatsoever about how the costs would be calculated. And I still don't have that to this day. And I don't want to put my name next to a multi-million-dollar expenditure that will balloon beyond what inflation is over the next 5 years as the children transfer from pre-choice to tuition model. All that we were told was that it was going to be an hourly rate based upon the state's in-district circuit breaker rates. We took our service delivery grids from the IEPs and we calculated out the hourly rates. We felt that those were in line with the actual cost of special education children in Massachusetts, and it was in with just a very few percentage points of what Quabbin had projected, so it made perfect sense to me financially. I've been in special education now for 2 decades, and I don't understand how it's possible to provide special education services to our high school at such a significantly discounted rate as we do, and every school district in the state does as well. It doesn't fall into normal parameters. So from what I could see, the calculation that we did was appropriate and it was in line with what we were given verbally, but I have yet to be given a written methodology of how those costs would be calculated. With the Quabbin model, we would be able to tell you almost to the penny how much it would cost, and then I would recommend $150,000 in stabilization, because any time the other district recommends a one-on-one, additional speech, additional this, additional that, the costs would go up. In the Quabog model, on their spending and without a methodology, I would recommend between $700,000 and $1 million in stabilization to account for costs that are unknown, because we do not have a written methodology to make the calculations. We have the service delivery grids. We have our students' information, and that's only for the students we have. We don't have access to the information for the students they have who will transfer from school choice to a tuition model in the years to come. So in both models, when we calculated it out, it came into the realm of reasonable. The cost of education per child in Massachusetts, every child in every district across the state, is about $20,000. That's what it came out to. So I'm confident in the $1.2 million number that we put forward, but I have no reason to change it professionally, because I have never been given a written methodology by which the calculations will take place. It's insufficient, and I cannot go forward and tell the people of North Brookfield this is a good deal, it's a fair deal, because there are no guarantees. What I can say is that by the year 2033, costs will go way, way beyond what would normally be paid. But then it plateaus because all of the kids will have transferred from being in the previous choice model to the tuition model. But if I had a written methodology that explained how that the costs would be assessed, we could run that to the penny. We have access to the data, we just don't have access to the methodology by which the town will be charged. So what we did was the service delivery that comes from the state, they say this is how much the state pays per hour for speech, OT, PT, counseling, BCBA, teacher of the deaf, special education teacher, and we just calculated out per hour the way that we were told at the meeting that we attended. But the good news is that the dollar amounts between Quabog and Quabbin were just around the same. There was no real bargain to be had in special education when I believe the costs were apportioned appropriately.
Just a quick question, Mike. Did
Yeah.
you send anything to Quabbin for them? You said they calculated the costs based.
Quabbin did it, so the way Quabbin did it was really made more sense. They had a per pupil expenditure that accounted for the cost of inclusion. 80% of all children in special education spend 80% of their time in the general education setting. What Quabog did was they said, we're not going to account for anything in special ed. Your per pupil will be $11,500, but you're going to pay per hour for special education thereafter. So in the Quabbin model, it's pretty easy. If you have a one-to-one, we pay the cost of the one-to-one. If we have, so in addition to what they pay for inclusion, a lot of the additional services would be a la carte based on individual student need once they transcend the inclusion setting. In the Quabog model, it was different. Every single child will be accompanied by a bill. And the more services that child gets, the bigger the bill will be. The danger here is this. No longer would North Brookfield have the ability to make decisions about North Brookfield IEPs. So if I were the special ed administrator in that district and I said, well, normally this student gets 30 minutes of speech once a week, but I think this student needs 30 minutes of speech 5 times a week. That's it. When that goes on the IEP, that's the bill North Brookfield gets. So what happens is we have financial responsibility, but we have no authority over the services that are being that are being given in that methodology. So you can't project for the decisions of other departments, and you don't know what they are when they're coming. So I do think that a stabilization account would have to be established, and it would have to be healthy in the Quabog model.
Yeah, and I don't think, I know I wasn't. I don't think he was asking you to change your number. I was just asking for an opinion on if you weren't using, I was in the same meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And they said they were going to use the Massachusetts
Yeah.
circuit breaker model.
Right, that's what we did.
So that's not a model?
No, that model is, there's the methodology is this. It tells you what the hourly rate per service is. But you got to keep in mind that that circuit breaker application is for reimbursement, and you only get 75 cents back for every dollar after you exceed the threshold of $52,000. A tuition model does not account for the $52,000. So what I believe that they were saying was, you're paying for your special education services because they're yours. They're not spending the first $52,000. So we do not use the reimbursement calculator provided by the state because that $52,000 must be spent by the district who is paying for the services first. We're the ones paying for the services. So why would I use a reimbursement calculator for the state? I'm not asking for reimbursement.
That's what they had said in the meeting. That's why.
Yeah, what they said was hourly based on this model. And I said at the meeting, you were there, Matt, I said, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and I don't want to go back and forth because
Yeah.
a lot of people weren't here, but what I think we should do ultimately is if this is something that we are looking at, we do, and I didn't even want to put anybody in the district in the position of having to do these calculations. I think we should have just hired an independent person to look at them anyway, because they're independent. Based on some of the calculations I've seen inputted, I think it needs a much deeper dive because there were some things on there that I think may not have been accurate, and I'm not calling into anybody's question of anything. I just think that we would need to anyway do a deeper dive into that specific subject. So in terms of, Tim, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, if you have any questions about any of my other responses, I can clarify.
Yeah, I mean, we can
those,
go through those all after. I just want to touch on
but- Yeah,
the first biggest thing there.
I did have one question though. I did think, and I could be mistaken, that in the, maybe I'm mixing them up, in the Quabog proposal, I thought it did include someone from our staff on that IEP team. Did I mistake that?
The person would be there, it's the same thing that happens when we have a school choice situation. Being at the meeting does not give you the ability to propose the IEP. The district that's providing the services proposes the IEP. So we would have a seat at the table, which means we would know what's going on, but we would not be the ones to decide if a child is going to be offered one service or another, additional services or less. And then, actually, you bring up a great point that I also think needs to be negotiated, is if, I've been in special education for a long time, it's a litigious business, unfortunately. If there was a claim that was made and involved a litigation or settlement of something that happened in Quabog, the bill would be North Brookfield's. So if there was controversy, or if there was a lawsuit, or if there was a BSEA hearing, the legal fees and the litigation would be North Brookfield's, even though we weren't the ones providing the service. And that's sticky, because in special education cases, when the district loses, not only do you pay your own legal fees, but you also pay the legal fees of the plaintiff. And that's why most cases go to settlement. I would be remiss if I didn't add one more thing. If the district, the tuitioning district, decides, well, this isn't a program we have, we're going to outplace this student at a private placement or at a collaborative placement, most of which the starting cost is about $60,000 per kid, and it goes up from there, and the transportation is usually $40,000 to $60,000 per kid. If that district places those kids, North Brookfield pays the bill. So we have specialized programs here, and if they said, we don't have those specialized programs, we're going to place those kids at SWEC, at the collaborative, at Walker School or something like that, they make the decision to place our children, we get the bill, and they run total cost per child is low average about $100,000 per child. So again, you're giving up your autonomy to make the decisions, but you're retaining your fiscal responsibility. And I've always been told that being financially responsible for something that you have no control over is something that you need to be really careful with, for sure.
And is that the same with choice out students currently?
Choice out students, when they get placed, we get billed back through school choice increments.
Right.
And that's why
I meant the decision part.
the decision part remains the same. They're the LEA, they make the decisions. We then, and we have a situation ourselves where a student from another district is going to receive an out-of-district placement. That is a decision that must be made in the best interest of that child, but the other district pays. But it doesn't come out of the school's budget. It gets tacked onto the cherry sheet, as you probably know. And that's why when you look at the cherry sheet, the number of students who are choiced out divided by the dollar amount that the town is charged is more than $5,000. That's because of special education increments that are charged. It's always best to provide your own special education services in district when you can, instead of having kids choice out for that very reason. So it's a great point, Matt, actually, to have brought that up. Choice runs similar to that, for sure. But we wouldn't, and I would have a seat at the table for a choice student who's going out too, but I have no authority to make any decision about the placement. All I'm there is to sit there and come back and tell Mr. McCormick about the budgetary implications of the decisions that were made.
Mike, would it be fair to say, with what you know, just across the state in different locations, that the amount of litigations seems to be on the rise as well?
Yeah, there's probably, There is statistics on the state website. You know, usually between 600 and 1,000, 600 and 1,000 cases are filed with the BSEA annually. But very, very, very few actually go to hearing. And the reason for that is most districts settle because the costs of litigation plus the costs of placement and the cost of plaintiff's fees transcends dispute if things could go either way. The mediators, SpedX, and even our attorneys always encourage settlement. There are many law firms out there who specialize in that work. And we have cases even this year where I have to interface with Alicia St. Florian, our attorney, because advocates and lawyers for families are always reaching out to us, so to speak. And some of the litigation comes to us from attorneys who are working in a pro bono capacity, that's their job as advocates for children with special needs. And yes, I would say for a smaller district, I think that there's a lot of activity that we have to kind of navigate.
Just 'cause, I mean, I know I'm in
Yeah,
education.
that's right, yeah.
I know what's going on in Medicare, but for the general public, if you're not in education,
Yeah.
it's happening more and more, and that would be a risky
Yeah,
expense.
that's it. And the most expensive, the
I
most
think it happened on both
expensive.
sides though, because we still
Yeah.
would have K through 6 here that we.
Yeah.
I mean, either litigious society. I mean, it's growing. I think it's going to be everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Regardless of where. And then I think we're basically, and this has come up a couple times, we're basically saying that other school districts wouldn't care about our kids as much as their kids. I think that's what we keep saying when we're saying these things. If that's the case, if that's what we think, then I think, we get to a point where we vote, so.
But I just want to make sure I'm clear, is that I cannot endorse the Quabog special education methodology because I have nothing in writing. The Quabbin one was clear, it was succinct, and you would know within about 15%, give or take, I would keep 15% in escrow, what your costs will be.
And I do appreciate your
Yeah.
input, Mike, but
Yeah.
it was very clear, you were there the same day,
Yeah.
that both of those things were initial proposals. They weren't
Yeah.
contracts. You've mentioned contracts before. They
Yeah.
weren't contracts, so.
We should just have, if you're gonna be
I
spending
agree with
millions.
you on that, obviously.
You're
That's
gonna
why we'd have legal involved in everything.
Yeah, if you're gonna spend millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars, I think you should have a written methodology of how costs are gonna be apportioned. It shouldn't be just word of mouth. You should have something that calculates out the hours, the minutes, and the cost of service. I think it's dangerous to not have something in writing.
So did you not get the sheet that day of the meeting?
I did, and that's what I used to calculate the,
Okay, you
to
just said you
calculate it
didn't have a
out.
methodology. You're going back and forth.
Yeah, I was given the rate sheet.
Yeah.
I calculated it out to $1.2 million, and then I was told that that was wrong. But I have nothing to justify it being
So
wrong.
you didn't get the circuit breaker sheet and?
I did.
Okay.
And that's why I think our methodology is correct.
Okay.
1.2 million. I just want to be honest and clear about it. I think it's important.
Yeah, okay. All right, what does anybody want to go over next?
Now, are we talking about this spreadsheet that you forwarded us?
Yes. That's why, I think it's a much bigger conversation, and I think we have to figure out if we are going to entertain moving forward with these things, that has to be something that's obviously looked at first. So, and the conversation was also, part of the conversation was that, and this is, I guess, part of my understanding too, is, so right now, if we have 6 through 12, right? We are offering $1.2 million of service with 3 special ed teachers and 3 paras, because that's what we have at the high school.
It's more than that.
What?
There are 3 special educators, that is true. There's a school adjustment counselor full-time. I believe there's 6 paras. We have occupational therapy, speech and language pathology, physical therapy, BCBA services, ABA services, and other ancillary people who come in to meet the needs of our kids. We also have,
That's not on the staff list that was given
sometimes
to us.
we pay additional fees for certain boutique evaluations that we can't do here in district for some of our kids. You know, there's way more than just 6 people. It's not even close.
That was what I was given when I asked for the
Yeah.
staff list. It was 3 paras and 3 special education teachers.
There's a 3
based out of us.
generalists, but we have kids who have one-on-one support, toileting needs. I don't know. I didn't see what you got, Matt, but I can double check that for you.
So,
What's that? How many
that was from
paras
when
are
we
here?
sent staff out of high school.
What did I send you?
We'll go over it later. That's okay.
Well, no, what did I send you?
When you had sent me the staff list for the high school.
4? What about one-on-one for,
I'll have to look.
Yeah, I think this part of this is a much bigger thing that we all need to probably try to understand better, but anybody else have any questions they wanted to go over or topics they wanted to discuss?
Well, I mean, it's all part of it. This is part of the big picture. This is one of the variables. Everything else is, well, not everything else, but the other numbers that we receive in the proposals, and let's be honest, the reason this whole conversation started was for financial reasons. And the whether it's worth doing this and make it easier for the town to manage budget season on a yearly basis. That's what sparked the whole conversation last year when we started this conversation. But these are important variables because this is not a fixed cost. Even this sheet that I'm looking at from Quabog, it's line items. They're guessing at the number of hours. And some of these lines, if there's not a lot of hours included in them, and this is a very, very detailed. It's a detailed to the point of being a bulky spreadsheet to look at. I spent a lot of time looking at this, but it is variable. They're giving us a number, and it's a nice not round number, but it's something that could change. And in order to make these decisions, this is part of the conversation, finding out Mr. Baldessari's methodology and where we're getting our numbers, because in the end, that's the biggest part of the decision is what are we offering here for the same amount of money. So I think it's a reasonable conversation to have. It's a reasonable conversation to have prior to making any decision to go either way.
Correct. I guess what I was saying is I think that personally, I would like to see us have someone independent look at it, look at all the data, give us their opinion. That's my opinion. We can talk about it as a committee. But if we're going to say that we want that first before making any decision, then I don't know. That's all I was saying, is that we have to decide that we want to do what you just said, is figure out if that's important enough for us to hold off on making any decisions. Or, I'm open to talking about other topics within the tuition agreement. We haven't really touched on anything besides that, so that's all I was saying.
I have a huge problem just in the fact that 5 of us could potentially take away the decision from families and students. I think that they've come here, they've spoken, the emails. I counted out 43 emails that I've received over the last 3 weeks, 42 of them being, please do not close down the school. A lot of which, yes, there were similar formats, but when you get to the very bottom, a lot of those families added in why, what it means to them, the reasoning. And some of them were similar things, over and over, and just a one that was a no, and not really a lot of feedback given by that person. But the kids that want to be here, I feel like if we, and I'm taking it all into account. I don't want anyone to think I'm not looking at the finances. I saw the finances. If I thought this was going to save the town tons of money and was going to be able to help us improve something or provide something else, like, my consideration might be different. I would hate to consider it differently, but I would. The numbers just, even if we keep digging and spending money on digging, it just doesn't make sense to me that we're going to say, we could provide more opportunities for the kids. the ones that are here, they create the opportunities for themselves by asking and advocating for, can we have this class? Can we start this club? Can we do this thing? If we take this away from them, we are literally telling, maybe not in those exact words, but we're sending the message to the families and the students that we don't trust them to choose for themselves. For 5 years, all of these kids and the staff have heard, your school might close. Your school might close. The town wants to shut down your school. They can't afford to keep your school open. I want to see 5 years of the opposite. Focus on the positive things that are going on. Continue to build the programs that are showing success. Continue to look for more grant money. Get together with people that can go to the state to talk more about our rural aid and it needing to increase. Like a positive collaboration moving forward. And I just feel that we can't do this now after not giving them 5 years of the opposite side of that spectrum. Because if we sit here and act like the talk of the school closing has not lost us these numbers or decreased our numbers and lost us some amazing staff, we're lying to ourselves. I have so many reasons why I don't even want to move forward with investigating it. I don't know. I want to hear from others at this table as to how they feel about it as well.
I guess my question would be, or the planning, because I mean it's amazing. I mean the class sizes are remarkable. In that one-on-one connection is, but at what point can that not be sustained? That's where my concern is. Like, how much lower can it go? Because I mean, it's just if you just think about the numbers, that's why I'm actually surprised that the cost wouldn't be less, because it just isn't logical. When you do the math, we're so small, so we're really doing great with what we have. But what I think would be helpful with like some sort of a metrics, like where do we need to go? What's the target? Because it's really almost not fair that it's on the town and the school committee, because so many people are choicing out. It's not a decision we want to make, but at what point do you? And so I wouldn't be opposed to if there's clear metrics on where do we need to be, what can we be, is there a subcommittee or something to help us get there, of a lot of the people who were concerned about the closing, really combining in an effort to do that. I just think it's really tricky if you don't have that, so I guess.
I think that's a lot of what we talked about, like throughout the summer and stuff too, is in the task force meetings, was the long history this all has of, like, you look back to, like, there was that study in 2011, a lot of what you just mentioned was talked about there. How do we collaboratively, change things? And I mean, there was some great ideas in that study, but unfortunately it didn't. We're 16 years old. That's my biggest fear, honestly, coming back to the table every spring and having that question of, like, what do we have to? I'd love it if we don't have to have this conversation, but I think other school districts have it regardless. There's budget issues every year, but I think with being so small, like, we are faced with some challenging issues every spring, about what we might have to cut. And I don't want to have to keep having that conversation, but where do we get to before we can get to that point of not having that conversation? I don't know what it is, because I think we're pretty close to it now. I mean, last year we were talking about cutting the art teacher and the gym teacher. So that's one of the things that I look at is long term. I think you're right. I think that if these things weren't talked about, yeah, it might be different, but they're going to be talked about, unfortunately, because it takes money to run a school. Taxpayers are involved. I mean, it's probably going to keep coming up, but yeah, so that's
but
my
the school
thoughts.
committee is still going to be sitting here discussing a budget,
Yeah.
even if we were to enter a tuitioning agreement.
Yeah.
And my fear is it would come back on the flip to have ended up being something that actually cost the town more.
And I think that goes back to what Tim said about digging into figuring out some of those numbers, and if that's, so, but anyway, that's all I have to say. But I do agree with your premise, and I think that how we get there is the tough part. How do we get to a point of, where this isn't an annual conversation? Like, how much more, like Maggie said, how much more over net school spending would we have to get every year to sustain, like, things like that should, I don't know if you want to say anything, because I know you sent us an email today, so.
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, Maggie's on the right track here with her thought process, and that, you know, we have a lot of people in this community, in the school community, who are willing to step up for the school district. But I think if we decide to stay as a whole district, I think those same people will have to continue to step up and think about how we can bring back programs, how we can restructure some of the things that we have in place, and really look to identify the wants and the needs of our students and our families. And I think that's a shared effort. It doesn't come from one or two people, or just the committee for that matter. It comes from a shared responsibility from all of our stakeholders. You know, I think that we've talked about this starting last year and this fall to this point, where we've built some programs to lessen the financial burden of our district. We know over the last 3 or 4 years, we have 3 major levers that kind of drive the budget increases every year. That's salaries, that's our transportation costs, and that's our special ed out-of-district placements. And we've been able to bring students back. We've been able to build programs to support those students and their families in district, which, as we all have said, it's what's best for kids, but also it comes with a big cost savings to the districts, which I think is a trend that we're going to see that continue for North Brookfield. Coupled with that, like I just said, I think we need to continue to look at what we're building back for our students, what we're phasing back as far as programming is concerned. I know that Mr. Grant mentioned bringing back a world language. A few years ago, we did eliminate Spanish in the district. Bringing back programs like that, bringing back some of our part-time music and art teachers that we had to phase out last year. Those are positions and programs that keep kids enticed to stay in this district. Along that same vein, we need to look and continue to explore our innovation career pathways. We have a very, I think, a robust advanced manufacturing pathway that we're growing this year. We need to double down on that. And we can only do that if more kids start to stay in district or start to come back. We can then look to add another program like that, whether it's in business or finance or health services or childcare. And then we can also begin to add some staff to support that programming. So I think those 2 major components need to be really looked at. And again, that's that fiscal responsibility of keeping programs in district, but also phasing in those really strategic programs and classes that kids want and need. And I think that's what we have to continue to do. And I think, again, I can't stress this enough. It doesn't take just 1 or 2 people. It takes a committee. It takes our teachers, our families, our stakeholder groups to work together. We had, I think it was about 3 years ago, and Tim, you were part of this group, and I think that, I think Sophia Giangrande was part of this group as well. We did our strategic planning 3 years ago, and we set together a path for our district, and we've done a very good job of hitting those targets. That plan is due up in 2027. I think we can even get a jump start on that work and look at where we want to go from this year on, looking at what we've accomplished to this point. But that's the kind of strategic plan that we need to kind of get our district to the next level.
So I think that kind of is part of the conversation of, you know, like that apples to apples thing. It's like, well, so like right now it costs us X dollars to be able to support what we currently have. And if we were talking about bringing back things, you know, how much would that cost versus a tuition agreement and what they already have? Like, those are things we need to talk about and figure out what's important, you know? So.
Well, there's something else too that has come up during my reading of all this stuff. Just looking at, you know, the different schools, like Mr. McCormick said, we have French in our high school. That's not, both of the options we've talked about do not have French. I think Quabbin does, Quabog doesn't. Which made me think, one of the big pushes the last couple of years has been curriculum alignment, making sure that the kids, as they're learning through elementary school, they're being prepared for the high school, and how that would look if the high school is operating independently from the elementary school. It'd be part of what we talked about during the regionalization process was becoming part of the region. Now you're under a blanket ruled by the same school committee, the same administration, kind of aligning all those, say, those pathways together to get to the same point at high school. there would need to be a lot of discussion about what our elementary school is doing versus what the high schools and what the elementary schools in potential other districts will be doing, just to make sure our kids are going into there the same level of preparation as those schools, which is, when we're, just the language is what sparked that, and I started thinking about that quite a bit, just in regard to preparing our kids for what's next and not having a say in what that next is.
And we've looked at data and numbers about other schools that have tuitioning agreements, but I dug a little deeper over the last few weeks. I can't find a single one that ever closed a school to do it. Like, so as we're looking into it, I can't get past the fact that none of them you could go to or talk to or find anybody that went through the transition of the high school or junior, senior high closing. They just always didn't have one. Like, this, I can't find a single one that was in this position potentially considering closing a school. So it's kind of uncharted territory.
They did it in the Nahant Swampscott one, but it was they've been doing it since 1982. So,
Yeah.
so there's no recency of the. But I mean, and I think too, the other thing too is that there's not a lot of us left out there, small schools. So you're not going to see. That was the one thing when I spoke with Desi, the regional. The people that do all the regional agreements, she basically said to me, she's like, yeah, you guys are in a tough spot because you're small to be a standalone, but it's, it's tricky because, regional agreements take a long time to come into play. So it's like, what do you do? But what else? I mean, we could get into talking about comparison of programs if we wanted to. I think we've all seen what each district has and doesn't have. I don't know if that's where you guys want to talk about things publicly or not, if you've digested it enough to know.
I understand that both of those schools offer more programs, but I feel like the conversation needs to be more about the town and the students here. If the students here wanted those programs, they'd go. It's been proven by a lot of other kids that have gone elsewhere for various reasons. I believe we did the survey, was it last year we had the surveys for people that were choicing out?
We got some, yeah.
Yeah, there were, from sports to arts, different arts programs, things like that. That's one of the reasons last year I didn't want to get rid of the arts, because that's one of the things we have for the kids who are sticking here. If it was a pure programming thing, it'd be an easy conversation. Yeah, they win. Either one of those schools has more programs. But we have the programs that the kids who are here are choosing. So it needs to be something spectacular to make a sort of decision like that. I guess what's tearing at me right now is it's not what the other schools offer, but it's what does it mean to the ones who are here right now. It has to be such a good deal that we can move them into those other schools. And it's a bit of a culture shock. I know I went to elementary school in North Brookfield through 7th grade, and then I went to Quabbin. And I went from my class of 4, we moved to Ocam, I went from a class of 40 kids, most of whom actually ended up graduating from here, and then I went to 140 kids. And that was a rough transition when I got there. And I got there the year after everyone else had already kind of merged, because they have all the elementary schools come together, and now it's 6th grade. But that's my personal anecdote for this, but it was a culture shock. It was fine. I turned out okay. But it still was a transition, especially if you're late. The further you go in the school, the more you're part of that school and that culture, and to be moved from that to another one has to be for a really, really good reason. And I'm personally not seeing that at this point in the conversation. That's my personal take on this. We haven't voted on anything, but trying to be as candid as possible for the sake of expediting this process.
Just to kind of jump on that, some of the opportunities and stuff, I know that we were considering the extra activities, the things for some of the kids. If we were to do this moving forward, they may not still be able to take part even in those activities. When a sport or a club or an activity is in your hometown, the logistics of getting to it, getting home from it, and all of that are feasible. You take those same activities in there at Quabbin or Quabog, and then there's all these other logistics that just aren't possible for some of these kids. I know firsthand, I taxied tons of them home from school dances and games and Stuco meetings, and we willingly do it, but maybe the families that they're joining or the friend groups that they're with in these other places aren't going to necessarily be able to be that. And for some of the kids, they can participate in the activities here because they walk to it and they walk home from it. And they can't do that. And I know it just seems like a small piece, but to the kids, it's a huge piece. If we're saying we could send them there because they're going to get more opportunities, but the logistics, we can't make the logistics work for them so that they can automatically be a part of all those things. So then they might feel even less a part of a different community because they can't partake. And a lot of them work. They have local jobs here. They work at Hannaford, they work at Subway, they work at Pizza Palace. They're working here for the same reason. They don't have the transportation to get out of town to do those things. If we were to transfer them to either one of these districts, then their after-school job is, again, we've really interrupted the logistics, the timing, when they get back to town, and how that impacts them. And for some of them, it impacts their families too, because some of these kids are high school age, and let's be real, they're working to support themselves and help their families a little bit financially sometimes. I know they seem like little points to some, but if you get to know these kids, or you know the high school age kids, it's actually a big part of their overall daily experiences in this town.
Anybody else?
I'll add something else. One of the things that we try to do here at these school committee meetings is give a forum for whoever watches. There's usually not this many people in the crowd, but whoever, the tens of people that watch at home, we try to tell them what's going on at the school. I think for years there's been a messaging problem where kids in elementary school are being asked what high school they're going to go to. And, if the decision is not to tuition them out and to commit to the school, then it can't just be us and the faculty and the staff committing to the school. It's got to be a town-wide commitment because everyone's got to be in on it. And you don't have to love every single thing the school does, but it's getting involved with it, finding out what's going on, learning about what activities are offered, going to a sports game, going to the plays that are at the theater, stuff like that, just coming into the buildings. They're public buildings. The taxpayers pay for the buildings. I think there's probably a surprising chunk of people in this town that haven't been into this building that we are sitting in right now. Either they haven't had time when it was during the hours, or they haven't had reason to come here. It's a cool building. It's a nice school. It's not huge. I mean, there's some monster regional schools that were built around here around the same time. It's built for a little more than what we have, but it's built for the sort of class sizes this town would produce. And it's a nice building. It's got all the amenities, and just little things like that, like getting people in the door. And Mr. McCormick's done some outreach, and we've had a lot of events, and I know the Christmas event they have here is a big thing in the elementary school, and it just gets people in that wouldn't normally come to the school and to see what we have. It's important, the messaging, and if we commit to the school that's great, but the town as a whole would need to back us up on it and try to avoid having these conversations down the road. Or we need to have a concrete plan about what the actual plan is. I was a supporter of regionalization, which had us in a region and sitting on the committee with them and doing all that stuff, and would have been a clear path. This one, the nature of a tuitioning out is a contract that renews every 3 or 5 or whatever years. I think 3 is typical for them. But we can't unring this bell once it goes. You can't just reopen the school easily. It's done. And whether we then proceed to regionalization, that's still a gray area. I'm just looking at the different paths and how each one gives you maybe 2 choices from that point. But we all need to be in on it. Everyone needs to buy in on this. And it's a messaging thing as much as it is a numbers thing, and as much as it is supporting the kids. The kids should feel like the town has their back when they're in this school, not that they are a burden to the town.
Amen.
Agree.
Thank you, Tim. Anybody else? Questions?
I'd like to thank Mr. Murphy again for getting a little bit more of that started too. I think the pancake breakfast that's new. And it's been bringing in some of the senior citizens, and if we can get creative and get some other things like that. But like Tim said, it requires a group of people getting on board and sharing ideas and a moving forward task force to, the think tank.
And I'll say, I said it again, I mean, I don't disagree with either of those sentiments. I fully support them if they can happen. I think we have to be realistic and meet with the town as well if we're going to say that, hey, we want to move forward as a standalone district, because we have to know what we're going to have to operate financially with, and we have to have a plan from the superintendent on how, going forward in these multiple years, we can sustain what we do have. Because if we get into a position of having to make the cuts, like Tim mentioned, with art or music, that's a bad place to be in as well. So I think we just have to figure out what path, like someone used the word path, is, and what's realistic. And I think revisiting history is important, because these same conversations have happened before as well. So I just don't want to see us repeat history, I guess, and be here in 5 years and potentially be less. I'd love for us to be here in 5 years and see numbers way up and thriving, but I think we have to have a solid plan for that, like we mentioned. So. Anybody else? What we could do is we could take public comment now. You want to do that now?
Might as well take public comment. I've been on my soapbox enough.
All right, we're going to do a public comment. Go ahead.
Just one thing, just to, on what you just said. You keep going back to 2011 and the educational task force. The thing was, it wasn't put forward by the school committee. That was the selectmen who did that. And so I'm wondering if there was some kind of disconnect in the middle. There was no buy-in from the school committee that was here at the time, I'm guessing, or they didn't see it, or...
I don't know if we're talking about the same one. I'm talking about the one that Jim Metcalf wrote.
Yeah, no, I wrote that.
Oh.
And Jim.
Nice try.
No, I wrote it.
I thought Jim wrote it.
He was on the committee. There were 4 of us. And it took a year. And talking to people from all over the town, I mean, we really put out a lot of time on that. And I think where it fell down, it just occurred to me that we were charged by the selectmen to do that. So I don't know where it fell apart, but it never got picked up by or was looked at by the school committee seriously.
Gotcha.
Because I think they didn't have input in it.
The way I must have read it, the way I read it was that there were recommendations from the school committee in there, so...
No.
Oh.
we gave that to the town, and what they did with it was Mary Walter back then. And another thing too, that just to comment, I think you're coming to some of the same conclusions. One thing that we saw is that we need a way to get buy-in with the town. And, you know, like you're saying, Mr. McCormick, if he could figure out the plan and we get people from the town together, I put my 2 cents worth in, I'll work on it. Anything we can do to build confidence in the town, be strong about if we're going to remain a small district, that we really build each other up and build up the kids, because it's been demoralizing for them. I know the kids that have been here, they like it, but they see their friends going away. So, like I've always said, a vision and a plan. And if we move forward positively, hopefully the town will follow.
Thank you.
All I got.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I have a couple things. I agree that the opportunities that we have here might not be the same that they have over there, but I agree that the getting there, getting back can be difficult. But I played field hockey here for 3 years. We've played Quabog in field hockey multiple times, and I know that they are completely against having boys on their field hockey team. So I know that if I went there, I will not get a spot on that team. I will not even be considered. I'll be told that I will, but then, oh, you're not the right fit, you're not what we're looking for. That's not how that should go down, because I can get that here, so why send us somewhere where that's not even going to be considered? I also agree that this school definitely was built for a little bit more than what we have, but what it was definitely built for, with this size, was a family, and that is what we are, and that is what we have become through this smaller size. And I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the 5 of you guys were elected by the town to make the decision about keeping the school open. So I'm not sure if you guys have to go back to the town in moving forward with keeping the school open. Pretty sure we've all elected you guys to be up here to make that decision for us. Thank you.
Just a couple more words. For those that don't know me, Ellen Davenport, I have the substantially separate program here. It is successful because it is small. We've had nonverbal, we have OT come in, PT, BCBAs, speech. Now one of my kids goes next door for speech. She could walk. We also go to the dollar store. They love us over there. The kids get money and budget, and we stand at the door, and other people say, no, you let them go first. They get a list, they get their money, they go shopping. We don't leave them, I mean, right there with them, but I mean, they're learning independently how to shop. We have kids, most substantial, my heart is breaking for these kids, because most programs, a lot of times they won't get the diploma. If they're in a substantially separate, they're there for the day. That doesn't happen here. It does with some because they can't go to a regular classroom. But the teachers we have here, say they have an accommodation where they can't write and look at, I have difficulty too, writing notes, filling in the blanks. An accommodation might be the notes are filled in for them. So then they come back with me and the parent, and we study with them while they're in. We try one gen ed class, and then we go to 2. 3 kids that we're not, it's only 3, but it's 3 kids that are gonna get a diploma that might not have, because they were with me all the time. Now they're gonna get a diploma. Because the classes are small, everybody's helping, and I'm learning how to teach math, and that in itself is a miracle. So, right? Anybody? See? So, I mean, it's just, we are successful. I can't see, they're playing on varsity basketball. It's just, I don't know, I don't want them to be swallowed up whole and just put in a substantially separate room, because you can't be in gen ed all day. And they've lost their spirit, and they've lost so much. So, I just, my heart.
To you, it feels like they're going to lose their family.
They're gonna lose everything. They're gonna lose a chance at a diploma. They're gonna lose, yes.
I don't disagree.
Go ahead.
Jen Holland. I had 5 kids in this district. I have 2 that are still here. One's senior, one's in 5th grade. My senior has been able to take the opportunities that have been here and just go with them. These kids, they don't need every single opportunity. They can use what's available to them. And like you were saying with the field hockey, like, we're gonna take these kids that are in these small classrooms, these small family groups, and we're gonna put them into a big ocean, and they're not gonna be able to, I don't wanna say that they're gonna be set up in this scenario that I'm seeing, but like our girls, they have been on student council, they have been captains of their sports teams for the opportunities that they have had, but if you put them in this huge pool, those opportunities, they're not gonna be the same. It's gonna be such a different experience, and I just, my heart breaks for the experience that would be so different for those kids. And when I look at my 5th grader, who is a special education student, who is getting every service that she needs here, when she needs to walk out of the classroom, she walks straight to Mr. Murphy, and he knows what she needs, or he knows who can help her if he's not available. That one-on-one, they know our kids, the services are on point, they carry over into my home, they make our whole life better. And she, just like you said, they're gonna get lost. And now, because of this, like you mentioned, that feeling that the town gives, the community, the negative, just the overall negativity that the whole community has to our school, not the whole community, it's not the whole community, we know this, but like, I'm scared about what's gonna happen. I have this 5th grader who is gonna transition to 6th grade. Do I transition her to a district that I know is gonna stay open, or do I take a leap of faith and transition her to 6th grade here and then think, what if I have to transition her to another district in another year or 2? We don't transition well because of our special needs. It's scary, and we need to know what's gonna happen. And then we need, if we're gonna stay here, we need the support of the community. That's key. It's key. It really is. And so there's a lot of components that parents have to think about, and it's exhausting.
Thank you.
My daughter went to school here her entire career. We kept her here. She wound up in a small class at the end. When she was in French, she had 2 students in her French 4 class, her and another student. And that was, she graduated in 2014. Now, everybody blames the studies on school choice or, talking about all this. This population has been in decline since the 1980s. The school was built for about 350 students. The projections were the town would have 8,000 people in the town by this point back 25 years ago. And it hasn't happened. I just want to know where we're going to be in 5 years. The student population demographically is declining all over the state. Young people are leaving the state. They're not raising families here. What's going to happen in the future? I'm looking at the tables here. There is no money. You can put all the money into the programs as much as you have, but what's the school going to be like in 5 years? What's the plan? I've been on committees multiple times in the past. There were all these plans. They never came to fruition. I'm just very concerned. I'd love to see the school thrive. I mean, it was a great school when it was built, and for several years after, but it just hasn't panned out. We can keep going the way we are. That's up to, you know, the school committee, the community, everything. At this point, I don't have a kid in school, so stay here, tuition out, no skin off my back, but I really would like people to look down the road, what's going to happen in 5 years? Where are we going to be? Maybe keep things the way we are and still work on trying to figure out a regionalization with somebody, but I just don't see 5, 10 years, very few kids are going to be able to, are going to be in the school, just looking at demographics. I look back to 2020, all the districts in the area are losing students. It's not just us. The only one that's kind of maintaining a level is Tantascwa, and that's because they're attracting students from outside, not just from us, but from districts all around. So people really need to look down the road and see what's coming. That's just my only point.
Thank you.
We got 5 people who got huge decision. I wouldn't want to be in your place. I just wouldn't want to be. Where do you go? Where do you go from here? I mean, one of the things that Matt brought up, which is true, we've been here quite a few years talking about money, talking about affording the school. And Dave's, forget his last name, his presentation, he presented all the numbers. We had one of the staunch opponents of keeping the school, one of the staunch opponents of keeping the school here from the Finance Committee, say at the end of that presentation that he was disappointed in the lack of savings. We were talking, we were going to save millions of dollars or $1 million. And realistically, the member of the Finance Committee, who was one of the biggest oppositional people to keeping the school, said, I'm surprised we're not saving much money by tuitioning out. I wish he was here tonight because he'd say it again. So, you got a tough job. 5 people make a decision for everybody that's coming along in the school system. I wouldn't want to be in that place. This is something that in most cases you would see a town vote on. Right? This is not the decision of 5 people will make. We've had over the last 5 years and further back irresponsible people handling the money for this town. All right? And every year it comes around, well, the school's the bad guy, we can't give the school more money. They keep using up all of our valuable tax money and all of it. It's not the tax money. It's not the town money that's financing this. This is the school's money. So anyway, you 5 have a tough decision to make. And as Dave said in his presentation, pay attention to it. Do the investigation that you got to do before you squeeze the toothpaste out on the kitchen sink. You can't get it back in the tube. That's it.
Thank you, Bruce.
Hi, my name is Kaylee. I'm a junior here at North Brookfield. I've been going here since preschool. I've been going here since I was 4. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Sylvia Plath and her book, The Bell Jar. but in that book she talks about this metaphor of the fig tree. And the fig tree has all of these branches with all of these fruit coming off of it. And it's meant to represent all of the choices in her life, all of the opportunities that she has, and which path and which way she can go with those opportunities. I think right now what we're looking at fits that metaphor better than anything else. We have a chance to give the students at this school all of the opportunities they have now and more, and to continue to set them up for the best path of their future. Or we have the opportunity to upend their high school careers and send them somewhere else. What I think we need to look at is very much like what the students want, how much this means to them. I know Ms. Giangrande was talking a lot before about how a lot of the students here can't make it to sports in other areas. I would be one of those students. I walk to all of my sports if her daughter Sophia isn't giving me a ride. I'm on the student council here. I play 3 sports here. The only reason I'm able to do that is because I live next door to the school. If I went somewhere else, I would not have these same opportunities that I have now, which would make the branches of my fig tree very, very different. I would have a lot of different things to look at with going to college if I went somewhere else. I would have a lot less opportunity. I would have a lot less to do. And I think that that's something that we haven't looked at close enough because we spend so much time looking and picking at the differences between these 2 budgets. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
My name is Sandy Bernard. I'm on the CPAC Family Commission. I don't know what we would call it, but we're a CPAC family group. And I'm also a member of the PTO. This is the first year that I've been given the opportunity in my life to be able to participate in my daughter's schooling at this magnitude. And the amount of, or the lack of interest, I should say, that I observe from my fellow parents at the elementary school is truly heartbreaking in all honesty. We all want to try to we all keep talking about this huge community that we want to continue to keep working on building together. So in the future, we can all continue to still thrive and be here. But the lack of effort that I see on the other side of that, we're rah, rah, rah here. But when it comes down to it, we are the ones that are showing up to the PTO meetings. We are the ones that are setting up the CPAC meetings. We are the ones who went and helped redo the library. We are the ones who have been doing a lot of things to help try to build everything back up. And I would really appreciate it if other families, I know not everyone is able to, but if other families are able to show more interest, it would really warm my heart. And for the month of April, the PTO is hosting a very large craft fair at this school. So our local community, it will be open. We have 75 vendors that are on the list that are going to be setting up here. And hopefully we'll have a very good turnout for our community. You already know I want to keep it open. I just wish more people really felt it. I don't know how else to describe it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
All right, so here I come, Sheila LeBlanc, town accountant. I've run some numbers, and what it comes down to for me is the opportunity for these kids that don't want to play field hockey, that have desire to play soccer, and the other places may have it. But when it comes down to it is, we have to, as a town, we fund them with net school spending plus transportation. Part of net school spending is all the employer retirement costs, the insurance, health insurance, life insurance is an administrative fee. Tuition to Bay Path, school choice out is part of net school spending. And the way I see it is you got a big cookie. Bay Path gets their money, school choice out gets their money. You have to pay the benefits, and the kids here get left with the crumbs because that's the only thing that we can cut. The town cannot afford, right now, we are in a deficit of $700,000 on the town budget. How are you gonna bring people back and increase programs without that money? 2.5% on our budget is about $285,000 a year. And that's for all the town departments to ask for a piece of it. Who are we gonna cut? Are we gonna cut police, fire, close the library, close the senior center? These are the things you're gonna have to look at going down the road. Is what can we bring, you gotta bring the kids back, but we don't have the money. We were given it back when John Provost, when I started working at the school, had got a chunk of change because he had a plan to bring it all back. Well, he left, and then you had Marilyn Tenza, who had her own plan, and she left after 2 years. And then you had Rich Lind, who came in with his plan. And then we had a one-year interim who came in with her plan. And now, what do we have for a plan? If a superintendent has a plan on how we're gonna bring people back, it's up to the school committee, I think, that has to keep that plan going with the succession. Because I know the union has brought up the changeover in administration has been hard. But we leave it up to a superintendent for an individual plan, and the way they go in and out of here, we have no succession. And so there's been nothing built with the money the town has put into the school. And now we're in a position with healthcare costs. We got lucky this year. They had estimated 22% increase. I think God must have jumped in on that because it only went up 2.9. But you're still, as a whole, stuck with that net school spending, and somehow the school choice out has to be cut down. Because you've got to get people back here. And that's the plan you have to work on, but with no money. And you're not going to get grants to fully fund what you have to bring people back with. You don't really have participation either. I've coached here for 35 years. I had, 16 kids playing field hockey. We could not field a 5-person cross-country team. You got to look at things. Other schools have other things. I get it. I get the kids like this small school, and you say to throw them into a bigger school would be tough, but what happens if we keep them so small? Their senior year, they're going to go to college. What happens then? How do they develop to get into this bigger school? I don't know, and I think we should encourage the kids that they can do it in a bigger school, a slightly bigger school. They can work hard, they can make these teams. Look at getting maybe a late bus to come home for the sports or the after-school things. Maybe that's something you have to look at in an agreement somewhere. I think that watching this on my piece, that everybody wants everything, but no one wants to pay for it. And there's just no money. 2.5 doesn't cover it.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Rich Reagan, Union President. Again, I think some of you up here have chosen to choice your kids out of schools. Certainly a decision we respect, but I think you also have to respect the families that have chosen to keep their kids here. That's a choice they've made. As much as the hope of the town was this would save money, it won't. Definitely in the first year, regardless of what number you go with. It might not in future years. This is the place that does give opportunities, and there are expanding things. Again, soccer should be back next year, along with field hockey. Hopefully, volleyball will also follow. There are plans to make things bigger and better here. And the other thing, again, there's also a plan, but as most of you know, some of you are not super, probably longest tenured school committee member, I think, right? with how many years?
This is my sixth.
6 year, right? And then we have our longest tenured administrators 5 years in, right? So I think the really focus needs to be like, how can you empower the teachers to move the school forward? Because the teachers are kind of, some of us are certainly the stable place, the stable voice here. And certainly we can, and we've worked with the town numerous times. In my tenure as union president in the past, we've given, twice we've given furloughs. We've taken furlough days to save sports and arts here. We are willing to work to keep the school open. We just need to be empowered to do so. And I think if you look at the core of veteran and new teachers and kind of use that as a focal point to drive this decision, I think you'll have more stability there and a better chance of having it be a successful turnaround.
Thank you. Anybody else? Go once.
Net school spending is net school spending. We were never going to save money. Regardless of what anybody thought, it was never going to be a money savings. Net school spending is net school spending. It's mandated.
That's correct.
It's really what's left of it for the kids here. And the further the road we go down this road, if we are not successful in turning this around, each year is going to be more desperate than the one before. So the conversation will never go away. This hope that kids will stop leaving because we stop talking about it, we're not going to be in that position. The other thing to keep in mind is the more desperate we get, the less bargaining power we have into any of these agreements. Because we are quickly going to get to the point of unsustainability. And it's going to come to a choice of whether or not we're going to tuition out, because eventually we're going to get there. The choice, there will be no choice. It'll be where we go. And what's our position then? Will we have time to talk about it?
What's his point?
Will we have time to negotiate? Will we have that luxury on our side to make sure that we get the best deal we can? Again, I am all up for a miracle cure. Support from the community, support from the town. But what it all boils down to is the money. And net school spending is net school spending. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right.
I feel like I've spoken at every meeting that I've gone to, and I try to change it up a little bit because I think of things I wanted to say after I left. But to me, it all boils down as, speaking from a parent who had students go through the school system and one go through Bay Path, and living in town almost forever, almost as long as my husband. I think the community support for this school, we rise to the challenge so many times for so many different things. Even over vacation, the music teacher is starting this awesome program in the elementary school, and she put out a call for instruments, and I messaged her and I said, well, do you know about this or that, and I'll help you fundraise. But she's got the community stepping up to donate all these instruments to make this program happen. And many of you know of my fundraising efforts to get the kids to go to DC. What other school lets their kids go to DC 7 through 12? And then all of the people going, except for maybe 2, were paid by fundraising and donations. So it was like $40-something thousand last year that was all raised and donated for those kids to go have that experience, because other bigger schools have that experience. So time and time again, this school community rises to the challenges that we are faced with. And we make it happen for these kids, and then we see the success when they graduate and get into the colleges that they want to. And at the last meeting where I was practically crying because our senior got into the, school in Florida for aerospace that is his dream. And he's graduating from North Brookfield. So when we talk about comparing our catalog to their catalog, the students who do come here are getting what they want and need. And we make sure it happens. The staff here makes sure it happens, the administration. And we do it on a shoestring budget every year. It would be really, really nice to see more people speak positively about the school and to hear the school committee talk about all of the exciting plans that we're going to try to keep the school open and keep kids here, because I know parents who I've talked to even recently who said, we keep talking about closing, I have to choose them out now. Well, no, if you keep them here, we don't have to talk about closing. So parents make that decision based on what we say here, not necessarily for the catalog or for the soccer or whatever. I mean, actually for soccer, they do go out lately because we don't have it, but if they stay, we will have it. So I think when you're deciding, hopefully to keep this school, that you recognize the fact that it has to be a positive message going forward time and time and time and time again of all of the good things we do for our kids here and all of the support we give them. Because it's not easy. We could all go work somewhere else that pays more or offers more or whatever, but we also choose to stay here because we believe in the kids and what they're getting here for an education and the community that we're building and the leadership skills they're taking to those colleges or out into the workforce. I think we owe it to the kids and families who are choosing North Brookfield to keep it open. And I hope that's the decision that we make.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, seeing none. Anybody, we can have more discussion after the public comment, after you've heard some stuff, or take a motion. I think there's a lot to think about, given things that were said and that have continuously been said. Realities that we have to face, and we have to figure out those realities down at some point. I mean, I think that there is something to be said for if we're looking at strictly right here and right now, we can afford what we can afford. We can afford as a town what we're doing. We need to be able to, like I said, do that continuously. And hearing some of the things I've heard about town finances, I just don't know that it's possible. So that's why I would be in a position that I feel like we should look further into that Quabog number and see what the actual cost would be. That would be my recommendation, to have as much information as we can to make the decision, but I'm open to anybody else making a recommendation as well.
If you think we should look into more information from Quabog, then I think we should look into that. We should put a time frame on it, because we can't keep it open-ended. I mean, to make a motion now and to decide something either way, if you're leaving it hanging out there that there is more information to be had, I think we'd be remiss not to at least look at that. But we need it to be a relatively tight time frame, because we can't keep dragging this out. We gotta.
So the company that I talked to, TMS, said they could turn it around in less than 2 weeks, or they said 2 weeks or less. So
And what is the information that they're
The
going
cost
to-
we were talking about, they would be going through all the IEPs, tallying up the costs.
So Quabog's done theirs, Quabbin did theirs, Mr. Baldessari did his.
Yep.
This will be a third party.
Exactly.
Doing the same.
So just to clarify, Quabbin didn't do any calculations, because they're giving a encompassing total amount per student to include any potential sped costs.
Right.
So the amount for Quabog, we're hearing two different amounts right now, so yes, it would try to get that number so we can have a real number to discuss. And again, it's just for next year. It's not, we don't know, just like we don't know here, the special ed costs for future years. It'd be the same situation. So there has to be an appetite for that, though. I don't want to, I'm not going to be the only one to say that. So.
I mean, there's the part of me that's like, doesn't want to leave that information out there, but I also feel like we need to do something.
So, and that's just the thing. So my thought on this, after hearing people from various students, parents, teachers, town accountants, selectmen, just hearing all the information, is that there clearly are financial issues at play here down the line. And we knew that. I think you and I both know that from being on the board for a long time. We talk about it every budget season. A lot of schools talk about it every budget season. So that's always going to be a topic, regardless if we are here or not, for the high school. But I think having some sort of identifier, which I know I've been chatting with Tim about, is like so there's these two tuition scenarios, and then what's the third scenario? We don't really have, we have an idea of what's going on for next budget season, but I think for next year, for FY27 here, but I think to really look at, like when we multiply out everything with, staff increases and things like that per contract, like look at the next several years, that might give us a better picture of where we're going to be at. So I think that's also an important piece of this, my opinion. Because I will echo what a lot of people have said. If we can do it here, that's ideal. That's what we want to do. But we need to be, we can't make a decision based on, with information we don't have the other side to. And that goes along with so if we're just saying based on emotion, based on, doing the right thing and keeping the school here, we could vote that way, but we need to make sure that we can sustain it financially, is what I'm getting at. And the same goes for the tuition agreements. We need to make sure we could afford those if we were looking at them. Or we talk about going backwards and...
Well, the tuition agreement then becomes part of the cookie that Sheila was talking about. You now have that tuition agreement portion of the cookie coming out, and that leaves elementary school.
Right, and that's why we need to know the number to make sure that we're not running into that situation where I totally agree with you.
But the potential for the special ed cost to become this unknown and this not capable piece, we're never really going to get a definitive numbers for that you can.
No, and just like we don't here is my point.
Right.
So if
Mr. Baldessari has a question too, but you finish your thoughts.
One recommendation on financial modeling is that any calculation needs to be done through 2033, when the children have all gone from choice to the tuition model. To be fiscally responsible, please calculate through 2033. My models have that ballooning cost well beyond inflation. My projection is it will cost much more in 2033 than anybody would have planned for. So if you're going to bring in TMS, a 5-year analysis is necessary to be responsible to the taxpayers of this town. And that's not just special education, that's also the transfer of kids from choice to tuition model. And the possibility of kids who attend one school transferring to another because of free transportation. It could be up to $2 million more than expected in 2033. Something you'd need to know before making a decision, for sure.
You'd also have to increase the budget by what your budget would be in 2033 in order to do.
That's what I was talking about in general, examples, like looking at all sides of this. And I do agree with Mr. Baldessari, that's the wise thing to do, is to look all around at everything before making a decision. But I know there was an appetite last time to move this forward as quick as we could too. So I'm trying to balance that here. I am of the opinion that you never make a decision without all the information that you could get. I would hope that we would have had a lot of it by now. For various reasons, it hasn't happened, but we certainly should go that route. But we are a committee and we can vote on that, so. Take a motion.
That's the question. Is it okay?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, it looks to me, this is in my eyes, that tuitioning out is not what would be best for North Brookfield. You all know the way that I feel, but I think we're going to lose a lot in the way that we won't have a voice. That's one of the biggest things. There's no voice going tuition out. But it made me think when you were just talking, maybe there's a hybrid choice. I know that when the superintendent of Quabbin came, she talked a lot about
Shared resources.
What?
Shared resources.
Yeah, shared resources, like for special ed and I don't know what else, other administrative things. But I was thinking of the special ed especially, and I don't know if there's a way, if I was gonna go, this is just what I would do. I would look to Quabbin if I wanted to regionalize, because they were the only ones who said they would use our building. And you would have a better flow from the kids if they had to go to another school. You'd still have this building where they were familiar with, and you'd have other kids coming here for maybe special ed, maybe a whole special ed building, or a whole junior high, or something like that. You don't know yet until you're talking to them. But these are conversations that I think might be helpful, especially with the budget problems. That would be really a hybrid plan that might be worth talking more about and not getting tied up in a tuition program, and then negotiating our way out of it and into a regional.
That's kind of what I was referring when I referred to the superintendent, is that's what we rely on him to come up with a plan for something like that. So I know that was mentioned, he had mentioned that a while back when we were in the task force, that he had a plan, so that's what I'm asking him about right now.
I thought it was just for plan to keep the school. I don't know anything that.
I don't either. That's why I'm saying, that's what we're trying to talk through right here is the next steps. And let's be careful too about when you say that Quabbin was going to use this building. I only say this because I saw the superintendent's eyes kind of light up when you said that. I don't think that was just conversation, so I don't.
That wasn't part of the I thought I heard conversation.
I just don't want to put words in their mouth.
That's okay. I was surprised by that comment. I think what we talked about was shared services and things we could do together. And I think we talked about having a regional agreement where we would say we use certain buildings. We didn't have any conversations around that at this point.
Would you say we something we could talk about?
Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But I'm just here to listen.
That's okay. I'm letting you.
So just in response to that, Deb, regionalization has to be voted on at the town level. And
yes.
Right now, the only vote is looking into regionalization with Quabog. That vote has not been rescinded, so you would have to rescind that vote and go back, I believe, and to look into regionalization with.
Okay, it would have to be rescinded even though.
Nothing's been voted on since, so I don't know how you can change it.
then you'd have to, okay, so you're saying because Quabog said no, but you still have to put it back on the table then to talk to another school at a town meeting vote. Tuitioning is on the school committee. Regionalization talks is town.
I understand that, and I do think it's Bristol is a hard thing, but I think it's unfair for if a majority of 3 people voted to send all the kids to a different school. That would be all the kids in this school, all the kids 50 years from now, all the kids forever, and it's lost. And we have no say. You have no say. Once they're gone, they're gone. So.
3 votes.
Just 3 votes. 3 votes, and we all cry. That's all. I don't look like anyone.
Thank you. All right, so, and I have heard that from other people. I mean, that this is a tuition agreement by nature is an agreement between 2 school committees, but I mean, if there's enough people who are saying this shouldn't be up to just us, we can talk to the town and see if they want to put something at the town meeting. I mean, we could do whatever. I mean, we can ask we can ask those types of questions. I don't know that we can or can't officially, but if everybody else agrees that it's not fair for 3 people to make a decision, I mean, part of honestly, my outlook on this was that we did vote for regionalization. So a lot of the stuff, and I know they're 2 different things. I spent a long time researching them. I get it. I know a lot of the ins and outs are different. But we've heard a lot of conversation about, kids going elsewhere. That would have been a part of regionalization as well. So I just want to make sure that part of that, we're kind of talking about a lot of different things. So within regionalization at the high school level, the kids were going to go somewhere else anyway, and that was already voted on. I understand there's a lot of in-between stuff that we have been talking about besides that, but that's kind of where I came from in looking at it from a perspective of not physically being here, is that decision was made. So I started looking at the other parts of it more than the physically being here. So I just wanted to kind of explain that. Yes.
I just have a question. I know that you mentioned that the decision about regionalization was made a couple years ago. I'm wondering when we're going to see the effects of that decision. I know that we're not regionalizing anymore, so I'm not really sure what that has to do with the tuitioning. I'm also wondering when we're finally going to get answers about what's happening, because I know me personally, I would like to know where I'm going for my senior year of high school. I would like to know where I'm graduating from. I was told that these decisions, I feel like I've been told that every meeting is like this final meeting where we're finally getting all of the answers for these things. And every meeting it seems like it's been the same thing where it's just like we need more information. I mean, Mr. Baldessari said that he had his 5-year plan written out and that's as far as we can go right now. I know that Mr. Gregg, you were trying to look through, I believe it was either a 3rd or a 4th party to get an estimate for money. But how far are we going to continue to keep pushing this off? How many more years are we going to continue to keep pushing this off? Where we have kids going to other schools where we just keep losing more numbers. How many more meetings, how many more times until we finally get an answer? That's just what I'm wondering.
Yeah, I don't think, we've talked about this a couple times, I think. And like I explained earlier, I mean, this is a pretty big decision.
I agree.
So, I mean, I would be remiss if I said, hey, we need to make a decision tonight if additional questions come up from, I'm trying to pull voices out here so we can have a decision. So if we do, we do. But if we decide we need more information, that might be part of the process. So, I don't know if anybody has anything else to chime in on that.
Just we're questioning the sustainability. How long can we sustain what we have? But I would really like to see, if we're willing to enter into an agreement for a 3 to 5 year potential contract for tuitioning, I'd like to see us flip the coin and spend 3 to 5 years seeing what we can do here. the talk has quieted a bit about the closure, and yes, might we have to readdress it at that point? We might, but I would like to see 3 to 5 years of positivity and trying to build the things up and highlighting and advertising what we have, looking at some of the programs and actually giving a 3 to 5 year stretch to see, do any of the kids come back? The regionalization talks just ended last January. The tuitioning talk picked up as soon as that was done. I would really like to see us give a 3 to 5, this equal amount of time, 3 to 5 years. What do the school choice numbers look like when that time frame is done? And if we have to readdress it at that point, we have to readdress it at that point. But we're talking about sustainability, but we don't know if we don't give some set time frame of what do those numbers look like as we're trying to build and add things. There are things existing and going on in the school now that were not happening a year ago or 2 years ago. And I just feel like we're not giving it the time to see the potential that those could have. That's just my opinion.
Matt, I have a comment. It's not an opinion per se. I just want to more for the public comment that to thank the people who have looked into the options, because I've been in a tuition committee this summer in the board, and it's been a thoughtful process, and the students have always been at the forefront of it. So it's really looking at all the possibilities, and I think that that's a really responsible thing to do. So I know it's painful having it on the table, but I think it was done in a thoughtful way, in a way that was thinking about the students. So I just don't want to lose that, and I also think I want to thank the schools that did provide proposals, because I really think that they were thoughtful. I think they really took into consideration looking at North Brookfield. So I'm not saying this to go one way or other, but I just want to acknowledge and thank the work and thought that has gone into this process.
All right. Matt, you got one more.
I would also just like to point out, I feel like the reason why we're losing so many of these kids every year is because of how prolonged these talks have been. If we don't give answers, these kids are gonna be like, oh, eventually we'll end up over there, why not get ahead of it? We saw that 5 years ago when this talk started with regionalizing Quabog, and we lost the largest exodus of kids we've seen recently. But we also get some of them back because they prefer it here, and I think if we highlight the opportunities that we still have and have brought in, we'll get those kids back and be able to start up our other opportunities to even bring in more kids that we didn't have here originally from those areas to here. I think we just need to really highlight what we have.
Thank you.
So probably needs to make a motion or something.
That's what I'm looking for. I'll entertain a motion if anybody has a motion.
What's the motion?
I'll make a motion that we end the current discussion of the tuitioning agreement and begin to move forward on a different path.
I'll second it.
All right, do we have any discussion?
Kind of had a discussion before the.
I mean, what
motion.
I would say to that is that, like, I think we do owe it to, we talked a lot about fiscal responsibility. We do need to dig into that for here. Because a lot of what has been said about it coming up all the time is, so we're a small school district with a state funding formula that isn't on our side. So unfortunately, it probably is going, we can't promise that that's not going to keep coming up, because it's by nature of what we're kind of set up for. Can we advocate for more money? We can. Will we get it? I mean, that's not our decision, but we can certainly advocate for it. So I just wanted to say that I think if we make a decision tonight, I think that's great in terms of moving forward, but we do have to be diligent as a school committee to make sure that we can continue what we're doing. So. All right, any other discussion?
I feel like the more we've talked about the tuitioning out process, it seems like a quick fix that puts us in kind of a weird position. As far as what Kristen was saying about, giving the school a chance to show us what they got, we've seen programs developing over the last year or two where we've gotten grant money to get those started, and then if we can get more kids back here, that just you can choice out and then choice back in. You can't tuition out and then tuition back in. I'm not opposed to down the road a regional agreement with someone where we have a say at the table instead of just a place at the table. And I think that would be something that is necessary to be looked at regardless down the road, because the town needs to have some sort of reassurance and the students need to have that reassurance too.
All right, any other discussion?
I guess I'm a little confused about the motion. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing, perhaps it's a second motion, just a 5-year modeling of the budget in general. I think it's a good process. I recognize we have no idea, what can happen, but I would be support of some sort of financial analysis. So I don't know if that's a different motion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need to put it in the motion. I mean, that could be something as a committee that we definitely address and talk about, because I do think that's very important. That's kind of what I was just saying, is that I think that all of these things that have come up in discussion from this conversation are important to talk about in various ways.
So I think the 5-year modeling, that's a good point, Maggie, is something that we should provide to the town. It's budget season. We can't ask the town for money for a budget without showing them, like Sheila said, where that money's going and what kind of a program we're building and how we project that out. Even if it's tentative numbers, put asterisk next to things saying like this is projected, it's still something that I think Mr. McCormick and his team could produce so that we can present that. We're not just giving the town a blind ask for the money. We're telling them, this is what we're looking at. And it might ease the discussions in future years because we at least have something to work off of and everyone knows ahead of time what's coming instead of it being a big surprise. I think it would make everyone's lives a lot easier, especially this time of year. And I think that could be independent of this particular vote. We could just make that something. Heck, Maggie and I could make a policy about it. We could vote on that.
But I'm in agreement. Like it shouldn't be a part of this decision. It should just be something that
it's something that we should do and probably should enact as a. I don't mean to say should. That's harsh. But I think it's something that would benefit the school committee and the school as a whole and the town as a whole if we incorporated that into the annual part of the budget process. Instead of looking 1 year ahead, we look 5, just for the purposes of longer term planning. It's hard to make longer term plans when, like we've talked about, there's all this stuff up in the air. It's like, oh, I could do this, but I might have to go over here anyways. Maybe I'll just wait and see how that plays out. If you're showing direction and a plan and some momentum towards something, it's easier to get other people on board. And that longer term planning shows that investment and that forethought in the direction of the school and where the money is going to go, not just where it's going in the immediate term.
I agree. And I think that's one of the things, you just maybe think of something that has come up a lot in this conversation when we were talking about regionalization, is why it was voted down. And those are some things we could also talk about and go back to Quabog, because that vote's still on the books, and see if, from what I understand, the parameters were the issue, and see if there's alternative parameters so we could look at alternative parameters. I think that might be worthwhile. That's a conversation, I think, for another day. But anybody else have anything additional to add to this? We have a motion made. It's been seconded. Anybody else? All right. Do a roll call vote just to be sure.
Sure. We're voting to terminate these discussions? Is that what we're voting
Correct,
on?
for the tuition agreement.
All right. Tim Canada, yes.
Matthew Grant, no.
Kristen Jean Grande, yes.
Dan Riando, yes.
Maggie Woodward, yes.
Alrighty. We are good to go. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Second. Second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye.